I'm Ernie McCray, and I guess if I had to identify myself as any one thing, it's an educator. Uh, Teaching is one of the few things that I'm really good at, and I'm not saying that bragging. There are two things in my life that pretty, I've been pretty good at: playing basketball and teaching. They both just came natural to me. I was just a jock. I was just a kid who liked to play sports, and I can play just about any kind of sport. The stardom level that I reached sort of came as a surprise, like icing on the cake. I remember being at Tucson High, and you're just trying to make your way and have some kind of status at a school, and then I became this star basketball player, and then people are patting me on the back as I'm walking down the hall. That was like a fantasy type thing, especially with Jim Crow in the background. They desegregated the schools in Tucson when I was going into the 8th grade, so I went to all black schools through the 7th grade, then 8th grade, 9th grade, and then the high school had always been integrated. Although before I went there, they used to have separate home rooms for black students. Jim Crow was always there. And you just learn to live with that. I was respected in my neighborhood. I was respected in my church community. I had a philosophy even as a kid that if you're a decent person and kind of a loving person, that kind of takes care of a lot of that. And I never bought into black people being dumb or anything like that, because some of the smartest people I knew were black. My mother was one of the most intelligent people I ever known, and my grandfather. And in my culture, getting an ass whooping is pretty popular. But that wasn't. I can only remember being hit by my mother maybe 3 times at the most. And when I think back on why, I think I would have hit me too. That kind of. So, but my punishment was like if I did something that my mother didn't like, she would ask me. She'd say, "Okay, we can't have this. You need to tell me why you went up there to Miss Warner's house, and you know how much she loves you, and you and your friends go down there and take all those peaches off her tree. I want to hear from you just what that's all about. And I couldn't do. I wasn't allowed to do one of those. I don't know. You know. She'd say I got all day. And then we talk. So I learned how to reason. My mother was the most incredible human being I've ever known. She was a big city girl. She grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Well, she was born in Gulfport, Mississippi, but her dad couldn't stand the South, so they moved to Pittsburgh. She was part of that kind of, Pittsburgh is considered as big a part of the Renaissance as the Harlem Renaissance. And then she went to college in D.C., at Howard University, and then when she graduated, she got TB. And in those days, if you had asthma or something like that, they sent you to the desert. And when she got to Tucson, Arizona, she went, "Oh, shit, what is, where am I?" And travel let me know that there was more to the world than Tucson. My mother would visit her college friends in different places. I've been to all 50 states, and most of them I was traveling with my mother. My neighborhood was about 10 blocks from the University of Arizona, so I pretty much grew up on that campus. My mother was used to forums and concerts and stuff, so anything they had going on there, we went. So when I became a student there, I was familiar, all that freshman orientation and stuff. I mean, there were things I needed to know, but I knew the campus and I knew the athletes, who were my heroes, and so that was my life. I didn't realize how enriched my experiences were then, because you're just living your life. And we didn't have much money, but every summer we traveled. So as a kid, I traveled through the South. So I saw some of the worst of human beings, and that whole thing, you can't look a white person in the face and all that. That was real stuff in Union, Mississippi, where our or my family history, the Wyndhams. My mother's family were the Wyndhams, and they were in Union, Mississippi, and we would. And when I look back on it now, I can remember conversations that I didn't realize at the time were about somebody being lynched, which was just kind of a thing that happened. But I remember back in conversations, the adults would say something like, girl, you heard about Sister Wilma's son, didn't you? Yeah, we told that boy, you can't be fooling around with those white folks. They were talking about something bad had happened to him. They kind of couched their language, so I didn't get the full story. But I look back on it. I lived about 12 blocks from the school, and after basketball practice sometime, just to get home, and I was already married and had kids, I would just jog. I wanted to get home to my family, and this guy would roll up on me. Hey, what you doing there? It seemed like you're in a hurry, and that's, screw you. That was one thing that was kind of good about Tucson with that whole thing. It wasn't like the Deep South. You didn't have to worry, well, I mean, you had to be careful with cops, but you didn't have to worry that you were going to be lynched or anything. So you could tell a white person, you know what I mean? It's like, you do that in the South, and that's just like a suicide, If you remove Jim Crow out of the picture, I had an idyllic life.